Sashlea. Wow, can't talk this morning. This is Sashlea. You are listening to We Are In This Together, and I am excited that you tuned in today. For those of you who have been here before, you know I like to just jump right into things. So there's not going to be a lot of pre-talk, I guess. So let's get going. Excuse me. All right, so today I really want to dive into fears that can sabotage our relationships. And this is something I have experienced myself. And I guess this is something that I have been the giver and the receiver on. And you'll understand what that means in just a minute. So the first thing that I kind of want to talk about is relationships are very unique and full of levels and full of so many dynamics to it that not one size fits all. So this is just an idea for you to experiment with and see if this is something that you need to bring up in your own relationships. A lot of the time, what I see, myself included, is that when we rule our lives from the fears that we have, either subconsciously or consciously, we tend to sabotage what we have, or we tend to bring about even more situations so we can face that fear even more until we have faced it and really sat with it and learned the lesson that we need from it. So let me kind of give you some examples. I want to talk about the first fear, which is I don't want you to cheat on me. And I don't know if any of you out there listening has ever thought this or felt this, or maybe it's a deep-seated fear, especially if you've come from childhood trauma. Maybe your parents split up or something else happened, or maybe you saw this, or maybe you've been cheated on in the past. And sometimes it's really difficult to get over the fear of that because that pain is so deep and it's almost laced into everything sometimes that it's difficult to really see past that fear sometimes. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what this one means because, all right, so here's the thing. If I am the one giving this fear, if I'm saying, I don't want you to cheat on me. Now, this isn't for everybody, but I know that some people I know, including myself, because I have done this before, what happens is I am subconsciously creating a pattern that I live by to hopefully prevent the other person from cheating on me. So let me give you an example. I remember a time in my life where I was so afraid of this happening again and again that I lived in such a way where I thought it was up to me to stop the person from cheating on me. Now, maybe not all of you have ever felt this way, but because of the way that I grew up, I felt it was my responsibility to stop the other person from cheating on me. So I would dress the way that they wanted me to. Excuse me. Sorry. Wow. My voice has decided to be a little strange today, so bear with me. So I would dress a certain way. I would cook a certain way for this person, so to be sure that they were really happy with me. I would make sure to clean the right way. I would avoid hot topics because I just wanted to be sure that they were always happy. And I can promise you that that is not a way to make relationship last. Number one, you're not able to be your authentic self. And number two, the receiving person of this fear can sometimes feel this. So it's kind of strange because it's almost like when I act that way, or when I am kind of like, I don't know, in that space, it creates, especially if your partner is in a healthy space, it creates this interesting energy to where they feel it, but they don't know what's really happening. And it's almost like the opposite effect. It almost is repelling, if that makes sense. So let me try to give you another example. Another thing that I remember I used to do is I would think, okay, well, I have to be sure that the other person isn't getting into trouble themselves. If you have that fear of, I don't want you to cheat on me, sometimes you get into a hypersensitive, hyper-aware state where you could be out in public, or you could be whatever, and you could be looking for reasons to support your fear rather than the opposite. So let me explain this a little bit in this way. My therapist is fantastic. She talked to us about our filters. So we all grow up with filters. We all grow up with these things in our lives where information comes in, but because of the experiences that we've had in our life, it goes through a certain filter, and we all have different filters. So she gave this example. She said, if I just want you to tell me words that come to your mind when I say the following. And she said, being at a beach with a blue sky. My answers was happiness, joy, peace, tranquility, sand, bright, warmth, waves crashing, sounds, birds, trees. So that's what I came to mind. And she said, your answers will be completely different than somebody else's. She said, some people hate the beach. Some people had a terrible experience at the beach. So they'll say things like dark, scary, dirty, messy, no thanks type of thing, you know? And it was the first time where I really started to think about this. We have so many filters. She talked about how data is just data until it passes through our filter. And so whatever beliefs we've had, whatever we've carried with us throughout our lives that have come into our relationships, then filters what we see. So I remember in one of my past relationships, I was so afraid of someone cheating on me again that I would, this is so awful, but I couldn't even go out into public with this person, to be honest, because I would go out into public, and because my filter, and my therapist says this, but when you have your filters, you will look for every reason to support that filter rather than solutions. And a lot of the times, fear does that. Fear stops us from seeing solutions. So with this particular person, when we go out in public, I would watch him. And if he would check out other women or whatever it was a threat to me. And that just came from years of trauma and years of conditioning and years of believing a filter that really wasn't serving me anymore. And that can sabotage a relationship. I've also been on the receiving end of someone not trusting me or someone not wanting me to cheat on them. And it's kind of debilitating because you feel, number one, if you've ever felt not trusted when you were trustworthy, it really sucks, to be honest. And number two, it's something that it just feels awful. And it gets exhausting after a while. And you don't want to live your life having to prove yourself, right? You have nothing to prove. If you have nothing to prove that way, you know what I'm saying? So there's the first one, just a little bit about that. So let's dive into a couple more. Let's talk about, I don't want you to ever leave me. Now, again, this is one that I've been on the giving and receiving end of in relationships. And this is what I have found to be true about holding on to this fear. If you say, or if you think or feel, I don't want you to ever leave me, there is a subconscious belief attached to that, where all of a sudden you feel it's up to you, again, to behave in a certain way or to make sure that the person doesn't ever leave you. This can be shown in excessive love, excessive acts of service and kindness, followed by rage because you snap sometimes, because you're not really being yourself and your fears are getting the best of you. This can also come out in feeling like you always have to be perfect. You can never make a mistake. This comes out in a lot of ways. And like I said, I've been on the giving and receiving end of this, so I know what this feels like. It stops authenticity. All of a sudden, we become other people's gatekeepers. And what I mean by that is all of a sudden I feel like it's up to me to stop the other person from doing these things that I'm so afraid of. This also goes for another one that's pretty prevalent, especially around here, and I'm from Utah. But I don't want you to leave your beliefs. I don't want you to leave the church that we're in. I don't want you to, abandon X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden it creates this mentality and this energy that we are the ones that are in charge of what you, my partner, chooses. And to be honest, that's never going to work. Your partner's going to feel the weight of that, the energy of that, and they're going to kind of repel it. And you are going to lose who you really are, trying to control someone else's agency. So all these fears are valid. All these fears are necessary to bring to the surface and to really look at. However, they can sabotage our relationship so easily, especially if we leave it unchecked or are not willing to look at them and really see what's happening. So let's talk a little bit about another one of I don't want you to lie to me. So all of these things are really interesting because they can go both ways. I don't want you to cheat on me. If you're someone who's cheated on you, or if you're with someone who's cheated on you, there's some things that person's going to have to go through and you're going to have to go through to be able to come back together, to move forward, not being ruled by fears and not being ruled by jealousies or questions or all these things. And it's going to take a lot of time. It just is. Some people are really good at this. Some people figure it out a little bit sooner than others, and nothing's wrong. It's a process, right? And if you really love someone and want to make things work, you'll figure it out and you'll work together and you'll do whatever it takes to try to get through those fears and those questions and doubts. Same thing with, I don't want you to leave your beliefs. Now, this one's a tricky one because I grew up in a home where my family didn't go to church. They didn't have a religion. We didn't talk about God. We didn't have those type of conversations, or we didn't talk about spirituality or things like that. But I was very spiritual, and I loved going to church. And you have to learn how to, I had to learn how to cohabitate with, is that how you say that word? I had to learn how to cohabitate with my family having different beliefs. And I came to the realization, at least with them, and I'm lucky, but I came to the realization that I could still love them regardless of whether or not they believe the same things that I did. And it took time to recognize that there is a beautiful space to be had in that, to recognize that they're on their own journey, and the way that I see things doesn't mean that it's the right thing for everybody. So I actually have a friend who she was in a church and her husband was too for a long time, and then after 10 years he decided he didn't believe it anymore. And this woman, I remember at the very beginning even me thinking, wow, that would be really hard, because I was in the space of believing that, again, somebody else's choices could affect me so terribly like that, right? And other people's choices do affect us. I hate to say it, but that's just the cold hard truth. It's up to us, though, to do the work from there so that it doesn't have to continue to affect us, if that makes sense. So this woman and her husband, I remember at the very beginning thinking, wow, that would be really hard. That would be a hard trial to go through. And it kind of seemed like it was, but I remember asking her one time, saying, how are you handling all of this? Because this just seems so tricky, especially because of my personal experiences at that time. I hadn't really dived into this one, but she told me something so profound. She looked at me and she said, it's so interesting. everybody tells me you should leave him. He has different beliefs than you and da da da. She goes, but I love him and he loves me. And we have found what works so that he can respect me going to church and bringing our children, and I can respect him not going to church and the things that he believes in. She said, that doesn't change. Just because his beliefs changed didn't mean the way that he treated me or our children or the way we live life has really changed. And we have a lot of conversations and we figure this out, and I'm okay with it. She said, not everybody maybe, but I am. And I just remember thinking, wow, how does she get to that place? You know, how? And so I had to dive into my own issues, my own fears of that, right? So I started to find a pattern of all these places of where fears were really ruling everything in my relationships. And I went on this journey and it was incredible, but I started one by one, putting my fears out on the table, sitting with them, crying with them, fighting with them, seeking for healing, seeking for knowledge, trying to figure out how can I get to a place to where I no longer feel it's my responsibility or it's up to me or it's something that I did or didn't do, that the person I love and care about has to be a certain way or they have to do things the way that I feel. How can I get to a place to where I am healthy standing alone and I'm healthy where I'm at, that no matter what they choose, no matter what they do, I'm going to be okay. Whether I stay with that person or whether I leave that person or whatever it is, right? Because we each have a different journey. Some things are just not okay for some, and some things are fine for others. I remember I had a friend of mine who told me that. She said, my husband views pornography, and she said, and for me, it's not a big deal. I don't really care, right? For me, at the time of where I was at, that was a big deal for me, and I couldn't handle it. And so you kind of have to feel and think through all these different layers, and it's taken me a long time to get to this place. But when did we become other people's gatekeepers? What were we taught, especially in culture and just everywhere that we're at, but what were we taught that we feel it's up to us to stop someone else from behaving a certain way or choosing a certain thing? I've kind of gotten to the place to where I feel like, hey, if you want to cheat on me, okay, that sucks big time, and I get to choose what I'm going to do from there, and I'm going to be okay. I remember one time telling my now husband, I said, if you want to cheat on me, you're an idiot. And if I want to cheat on you, I'm an idiot. And, you know, sometimes it took me a very long time to get to that place to where I could recognize whatever you choose, yes, I may be affected by it, and it would be really hard, and it doesn't have to destroy me, and I'm going to be okay no matter what happens, but I don't have to be your gatekeeper anymore. You know how big of a weight that is to carry, lugging around our fears in relationships like that? It sabotages a lot, and we don't even know it until hindsight. We don't even recognize, wow, my fears were really playing into everything I said, everything I did, the way I acted, the way I treated the person that I love. And so this is something that takes a lot of work, and it takes hard work. I can't tell you it was easy and it just came to me overnight. This takes really being completely honest with yourself, throwing every fear in front of you and looking at every single one over and over until all of a sudden one day those fears just soften and then they slowly start to go away. I recognized that a lot of the times the fears that I had would come true. And when I started to shed those fears and came from more of a space of love and self-awareness and recognizing that people are imperfect, I started to change things. I had a good friend of mine, she told me a story once. She said she was in a group of women, and one of the women said to her, and you can put anything you want into this space, but one of the women were saying to some other women, you know, I try to teach my girls that if a man is addicted to pornography, okay, let's say that one. Let's also add into this addicted to Nintendo games, or maybe if the man has an issue with X, Y, and Z. She said if they do, I teach them to never date them and to not be with them or to leave them right away. Excuse me. And my friend is very aware and very, she's been through a lot and she understands a lot. I really value her opinion, but she looked at this woman and she said, I hope, because all these women had children, I hope that when your son comes to you one day and says that he has a problem viewing pornography, or, you know, he can't stop playing video games, or he has an issue with X, Y, and Z, that you don't just kick them out of your house too. That you don't just say, well, you made a wrong mistake, sucks for you, bye now. These women were shocked. They didn't know what to say. And to be honest, in my past self, I probably would have said, no, but you don't understand. No, but that's different. No, but da-da-da-da. But really, what if what she said has a lot of truth to it? What if we stop feeling like we're the ones in charge of other people's agency, or that something that we do or say or don't say is going to change the outcome of what somebody else chooses, because we can't. Now, I know that I'm the only one I'm responsible for. That I have to do the healing for me. I have to make sure that I don't have sabotages that I'm creating or perpetuating. I have to be sure that I'm in a space where I'm healing and healthy and getting healthier and getting stronger and recognizing the truth of what I'm doing. Because a lot of the times it's really easy to see what everybody else is doing. It's really easy to see what my spouse or my partner is doing wrong because we can see it. But it's not as easy to see what we're doing wrong. Or you could be one of those people who, I was this way, where all you can see is everything you do wrong and nothing that anybody else does wrong. And that's not healthy either. So I have come to find that some of the biggest takeaways through all the relationships that I have had has been that I have to be my authentic self. And the only way to be my authentic self is to face all parts of me. A while ago, I was going through a really hard time. I was in the middle of a faith crisis. I was in the middle of a relationship crisis, a life crisis, everything you can imagine crisis. And I remember someone looking at me and saying, I love your light and I love your darkness. And I looked back and I started crying and I said, I don't love my darkness. I don't love me in my darkness. And I recognized that I have put all of these expectations on myself as well. I had to be a certain way. Not only was I subconsciously trying to be a certain way so all my fears wouldn't happen, but I was also not really being myself and not really being willing to be who I really am, with all of my insecurities, all my fears, and all the things that I do wrong, and the dark parts of us, because we each have dark parts. We each have dark places in our lives, and a lot of us do a hell of a lot to try to prevent those dark places from shining and from showing, right? So this is something that's going to take work. This is what I would suggest you do. If you're listening to this and any of this is resonating with you, or you're feeling like, because here's the other thing, is there's been some times in my life where I thought, oh, I'm good. I don't have any fears. What are you talking about? I'm fine. And then when you really start to dig, you realize, oh, I didn't know I was kind of ruled by that fear. Oh, I didn't know that fear was playing out in X, Y, and Z. So this is what I suggest you do. I want you to take a look at every challenging place in your life right now. Whether that's with a child, maybe you're really struggling with a child of yours and you can't quite understand why things aren't working the way that you'd like them to work. Maybe it's a spouse, a partner. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's a friend. I want you to think of all the relationships in your life right now to where you're kind of struggling. I want you to get out a piece of paper and I want you to write down every single one of their names. And then I want you to do a couple things. If you read, go pick up Byron Katie's book called Loving What Is. It will help you figure out how to channel your thoughts and start this process. If this is completely new and over your head, go pick up her book. It's going to help you challenge all your own thoughts, and it will give you a process to really go through this with each person in your life that you're struggling with, so that you know how, you have the tools, right, to do this over and over and over again with every person. I cannot speak highly enough of that book. That is what started and changed my life, because I didn't have the tools to know how to challenge my thoughts in a way to really see the relationship, because a lot of times we only see our side, or we only see what we want to see. So if you're up for reading, go read it. I promise you, you'll gain amazing things. Hang with it. It's kind of one of those thinker books, but it changed my life. So if you don't want to read, then just go back to your paper, and I just want you to start writing the main situations from each relationship that keep coming up. So, for example, maybe you recognize that with your one headstrong child, you always snap at them, or they never listen to you. Maybe with a spouse, maybe it's I don't trust them. Maybe it's a thing that's like, maybe it's just I constantly have this fear that something's wrong, or I constantly have a fear that nobody's really who they say they are. Whatever it is, I want you to really dig deep and try to find the underlying, or like the repetitive things that are happening, themes that are happening within that relationship. Write it down. Hold on. Okay, sorry, excuse me. So write that down and just start to notice what the patterns are. And then once you've just really done this, you got to get to a place to where you can really honestly look at all this. I want you to not focus on what anybody else is doing. I don't want you to focus on the past. I don't want you to focus on the future. I don't want you to focus on what so-and-so said or did, or what your parents did or said, or what your friend did and said to you that made you get this way or feel this way. I just want you to go sit in front of the mirror, look at yourself, and say, you're doing an amazing job with what you know. Now, I need you to be honest. Where in this situation are your fears coming out? Where possibly in this situation with they never listen to me, I'm constantly worried that they're cheating on me, I'm constantly worried that they're going to leave me. Where within these thought patterns are your fears, subconscious, conscious, really hiding? And then I want you to start writing out your fears that happen and come up within each of those relationships. This can be applied to anything. If you feel like you are in control of a situation, probably something in there to where you need to look at as well. Why do you feel you have to be in control? Do you feel like you have to do it on your own? Do you feel like nobody else will help you? Do you feel like if you don't control the situation, then they're just going to hurt themselves? Because that's another one. There are so many intricacies to all of this, and it's not easy. So just start there. Start writing down your fears, and once you start writing them down, you'll start to notice the patterns in your relationships will match with a lot of those fears. And then the next step after that is you get to just take one fear at a time, and you get to just sit with it and recognize in your life, where was that fear showing up, and what do you want to replace it with? So one thing that I did, because here's another thing, I really like the one, I don't want you to lie to me, because immediately it kind of puts us in this place of feeling like we have to somehow do or say something to stop the person from lying to us in the first place, which we cannot do. But then also it kind of goes the other way. I want you to kind of think of something, because if you're going to start this work for yourself, it's going to require you to get into a safe space with not only yourself, but others. And so I want to kind of describe to you what that really means and looks like. Okay. Let's talk about I don't want you to lie to me. If I am on the one end where I have to tell my partner something, or I have to tell somebody something, the truth about something, and it's not fun to tell the truth, I am going to be nervous. I might even be really scared to tell this person. I might have my own fears cropping up because, oh crap, what if I tell them and then this happens and then X, Y, and Z happens, blah, 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 blah. And so I have to create a safe space for myself to recognize that I'm okay telling my truth no matter the consequence. So I have to face my own fears to actually tell the truth, number one. Then it's up to me to ask my person, are you in a place, this is what I do, are you in a place where I can share with you something that's not going to be easy to hear? I really need to make sure that you can respond in a space of love, or maybe if you need to take a break, or if you can handle it, but I need your mind and heart to be completely open and rested right now. Because honestly, a lot of the times, at least for me too, is sometimes I've had a horrible day and I have 10 things on my brain, and I've been frustrated earlier that day, and the kids did something, and I've got 50 things to do. And if someone comes and lands some news on me that hurts and doesn't feel good, I might blow. I might get really mad or respond in a way that is not good or not healthy, right? So I actually make it my responsibility to, number one, face all my fears of having to tell the truth, get to a place to where I'm going to be okay surrendering the consequences of what may happen, because sometimes it may not be as bad as we think, and sometimes it may be worse than we think because we don't know. And then the second thing is being able to invite that person into that safe space with you and see if they're ready for it, and wait for them to be ready for it. I remember one time I had asked someone, this was a long time ago, but I said, hey, there's some things I need to tell you, but it's not going to be fun to hear. And I know that you're going to really want to hear it right now, but I really need to make sure that you're in a good space. And this person said, thank you, I'm not in a good space right now. I had a horrible day, and I know that I'm on edge. So can we try maybe tomorrow morning or whatever, Friday or whatever it was? And I was like, yes, thank you. Then we were able to have a conversation that was really good, and they were in a good place. So I always do those two things before I need to say something. So now let's talk about you as the person. Maybe your spouse or your partner is coming to you, and they've adopted this. They said, hey, I need to talk to you about something, and it's not going to be easy to hear. Are you in a good space? I then have to have the responsibility of being honest with them of, yes, I am in a good space, or no, I'm not. Because for me personally, I used to tend to always just want to talk about it right now. Like, I don't want any problems. Let me just be the peacemaker. We can't have contention. And so, no, tell me. I'm in a good place. But I wasn't really. So I had to be honest to be able to say, yes, I am in a good place, or, wow, I really want to hear what this is. And I know that I'm not in a good place to really listen to you right now. So that's your job, number one. Number two, I have to create a safe space for the person wanting to tell me the truth. This goes for kids. This goes for partners. It goes for neighbors, everything. I have to be able to control my response, or control my reaction, okay? So I like to say respond instead of react. Respond requires me to think before, and react is knee-jerk, just whatever. So let me give you an example. If someone comes to me and they tell me something really difficult, and I throw things and break things and scream obscenities and call them names and really just blow up, how easy is it going to be for that person to come back to me to tell me the truth again? Not so much. But if I do the opposite, if my child comes to me, my spouse, my partner, whoever comes to me and says, okay, there's something I have to tell you. It's not going to be easy to hear. Are you in a good space? I say yes. And then they tell me something that really hurts. And I go, whoa, hold on, just give me a second. Because why do we have to rush to respond? We can take all the time we need with information that is given to us. So take a minute and just think. Sometimes you may have to say, because of the emotions that I'm feeling right now, I cannot respond to you yet because it is hurting too much, and I know that I will say unkind things to you. So I need some time to really process this. Some people are that way. Or you may be able to respond right away and say, wow, that's really difficult. I want to find the solutions. I don't know if you and I have the solutions together. Should we find a counselor to help us with this? Should we have an appointment with somebody else on the outside so they can help us work through this? Because I just simply don't have the tools for this. And this is really, really big, right? So you can ask for help. Or if you know how to do this, you can sit with them in that space and ask them questions. There's a way to be able to put your emotions on the shelf long enough to be able to see the person, the heart, the person you love, rather than the person that you hate at that moment, right? There's an art to be able to take a moment and recognize, I'm going to deal with my feelings with this because this does hurt, and I'm going to have to process this one for a while. And in this moment, you were being courageous enough to tell me the truth, and that's all I've ever wanted. So I am going to give you the grace to sit with you in this really painful space and talk with you through it. And let's try to figure out why it happened. Let's try to figure out what we need to be aware of. Let's try to figure out what we need to do next. Because like I said at the beginning, do you remember? Fear stops us from seeing solutions. Reactions stop us from seeing solutions. Responses stops us to think long enough to try to look for a solution. So this is a space to really kind of consider and think about. If you guys want some more of these, I can do some more. I really like what's called role playing. I do this a lot with my kids where I will bring up a situation that could happen and I role play what to say or how to say it. For example, we talked a lot about, what do you do if someone calls you a bad name? And we'll get up and I'll say, Hunter, you're such a dummy. Why did you have to do X, Y, and Z? I act like I'm a kid and I say stuff to him. Or I ask them, what have you heard? Let's act it out. And then we help them respond back to us of what to say. And here's the thing is these are all just skills to learn. And I operate under the this, I guess, belief that if somebody else can figure this out, so can I. And I want you guys to really think if you can come to that space too. If somebody else can figure this out, why can't I? There's tools. There's things out there. And am I going to do whatever it takes to try to figure this out for me and follow my heart and listen to this and see the person and the heart beating rather than the problem right at the beginning? And figure out how you work, because this has taken me years to get to this space. I was able to sit with my one of my daughters for 5 hours the other day. When I was first mom, yeah, that wouldn't have happened. No way. I got mad. I had to I one time had to put my child in his room and say, this is for your protection. You stay in here. And I was freaking out. I was so mad because I didn't know how to do this. So it's taken me a long time to get to this place. And so don't beat yourself up. Give yourself grace, knowing that you're going to fail. You're going to blow up. Maybe. Maybe you won't. You're going to have times where you get it wrong. You're going to have times where you say stupid things. And you're going to have times where you're going to have to apologize. And that's just how it is. But are you willing to really find all of those pieces so you can stop sabotaging your relationships? Are you willing to put in the work? Because it's a lot of work. Some people aren't. Some people like to keep their knowledge and the things that they have because it's comfortable, and that's okay. But for me personally, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to always be authentic with myself, with the people I love, and I want to see the person before I see the problem. And it doesn't always work out. It doesn't always go the way you planned. And sometimes you have to go down a different path, and that's okay too. But keep trying. Don't give up. Our relationships are important enough to put in this type of work. And something I've also found is if we continue not looking at some of these things, we'll continue to attract situations. And I say that lightly because a lot of people don't like this. I guess not attract, but if we don't learn a certain lesson that we really need to learn, I feel, and I have seen on my own life, that I will come across situations that will continue to test that part of me until I finally look at it and learn what I need to from it. So those are just some things to think about now with your relationships and some ways to really work through it and see, just start the process, find more answers, find more solutions, experiment. Our life is one big experiment after another. So just try things out. See what works for you. What works for you won't work for somebody else, and vice versa. But it's worth it. So please do it. And we'll talk more about this if you guys want me to keep going with this stuff. So hope you have it, guys. Blah, 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 blah. I hope you guys have a wonderful day today, and we'll talk next time. Bye.